Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Thinking Outside the Box webinar. I want to thank you all for taking the time to join us today. The idea for having this webinar sprung from my recent attendance at ASAE Annual this year. During the 2 days that we had this expo, we had many of our current clients come up to our booth. And honestly, we were very humbled by the positive feedback that they had for us. But there was one reoccurring theme that kept arising from their feedback, basically circling around the fact that they wanted to use OpenWater for more. And that's the idea of this webinar. So we hope to have more of these webinars throughout the year and hope that you'll all join again for those as well. But feel free to submit questions as they arise. We are going to be having a very small Q&A period after the presentation. But with that, I wanted to introduce to you one of the smartest people I know, our VP of Engineering, Zach Schwartz, who's going to go ahead and start this production.
Thank you, Rebecca. I appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for joining. This presentation, it's recorded, so don't worry about that. But we're going to cover, kind of a host of topics here, starting with customizations. And really, this whole presentation is going to be like almost a series of screenshots about what other customers are doing. So you might see some stuff that you're already doing, but you might get some ideas about, oh, I didn't know another customer is doing that, or I didn't even know that was possible. Or it really, so this is just kind of spark ideas about how you can utilize the OpenWater platform in a bunch of different ways. And that's kind of the focus. And we'll share some features as well that aren't necessarily as popular, but could be repurposed in other ways for various workflows that you're all running. So we're going to dive into the customizations first. And this is probably our most popular customization, but I want to talk about it because we've made a bunch of enhancements to its functionality over the years, especially in the past year, where we have been leveraging our new integrations hub, which has just been a huge success for us. So for customers who already have a single sign-on or API enablement on your license, you're entitled to use the integrations hub. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because this lookup functionality that you're seeing on my screen right now, that allows you to like search for a name, this has traditionally been used to like look up a user or a company in your AMS or some other third-party database. But with the integrations hub, we have it working with Google Sheets and CSV files. So there's no longer like a strict dependency that, oh, you have to be using, IMIS or Salesforce or NetForm or something like that. Like if you don't have an AMS or any integration for, normal single sign-on, you could still use the integrations hub and do a lookup with a Google Sheet or CSV. And the best part about what I'm sharing with you right now is this doesn't require a developer to set up. So this is all done through configuration. And that's kind of a big leap forward over years past, where we always would have to have a developer build something custom. So you can search for, really what you want to search for is dependent on you. You don't have to search by name. You could search by anything. So just think about, are there use cases where it would make sense for someone to search a large list of something that maybe it's just easier for you to manage in a Google Sheet or CSV, and then if they click it, you could have it automatically populate some fields below, and those fields could be read-only as well. So you can almost kind of enforce that the user can only search for something rather than that. Or if it's not read-only, then they can search for an item and then make edits after the fact. So both flexibility, both that flexibility is in there. So yeah, I just want a big plug for the integration sub. And if you're on a single sign-on that could be moved to the integration sub, or if you have a data pushback as well, talk to us about the integration sub, because it's just better to be on that. It's more reliable. It doesn't require developers necessarily to manage. So there's a lot of benefits to using it, not just what I'm sharing with you right now. Here's another example that this is more custom, but it's something that we've seen quite a few times where you may want to nominate somebody, or you may want to enter in the details of a user on an OpenWater submission form. Are they eligible to be nominated, for example, or are they eligible to be a speaker? There's all sorts of use cases with this, but the idea is that someone could type an email address of the person that they're entering the details on for, and then we could make a call to an external API, whether it's your AMS or something, and then you'll see a little spinning wheel and a little checkbox. Oh, hey, this person's allowed. Or if it's not, then maybe a pop-up appears. Hey, this person is not eligible for X, Y, and Z reasons. So those are some integration related customizations, but I think a lot of people are not necessarily aware of the customizability of what we can do on a submission form. So this was a bit more of an intense project, but if you're ever in the OpenWater form builder and you see in the left side settings for a particular field, CSS class, like you're probably like, I don't know what that's for. What is that even used for? Well, it's used for situations like this. And out of the box, OpenWater doesn't have these like grid fields that you're staring at, but if the fields are added to OpenWater in a particular manner, and we cleverly apply some CSS and classes to these fields, we can actually set up a form like this. And you might have some use cases where you didn't think OpenWater could help you due to the nature of how you collect information. But this is just an idea. We could do a lot with the form. I got a couple more examples. So here's another example that's a bit more dynamic functionality. We call this like a computed field, where you type some information into a couple fields, and then there's another field or maybe a series of fields that automatically compute or automatically filled based on information entered in other fields. So in this case, it's just doing a simple mathematical tabulation. But you see that last field is actually grayed out because it's read only. So the user can't even edit it. So we see situations like this all the time, where a customer wants some field to be automatically tabulated based on something else. Now, this is a very simplistic example, but we have more complex examples. So here's probably like really pushing things to the limit in terms of our team and kind of the system's functionality here when it comes to customizations. But we really kind of took this to the distance in this example, where it's a combination of the CSS grid styling that I showed in an earlier slide, along with custom tabulation. So as users are typing information or selecting checkboxes, you got a little floating score appear on the corner of your screen there, and it's actually tabulating there in real time all the stuff. So this is really getting into, just have to keep in mind, the more fields you have, the more logic you have, that just increases complexity with everything that you add. But this is just kind of showing, I showed you a simplistic example, and I kind of showed you the maximized example. But just to take this a step further, I just want to add that, we have the eligibility, the feature, which allows you to block submissions if certain form elements don't meet certain conditions. And we also have the auto scoring feature. So you can combine those features with what you're seeing here to maybe block a submission if it didn't reach a certain minimum number of points, right? Oh, you're not eligible because you didn't hit a certain amount of points. So those are just some ideas people float around. Here's another example. This is another simple example, but I always try to encourage my customers to just think as much as you can about the user experience people submit, right? And this is just such a tiny example, but I feel like it can have a big impact and improvement on the user experience. So what's going on here? Well, this is a form where at the top of the form, you're typing in nominator information, right? And this is just a repeating animation that we're looking at. But at the top of the form, the nominator typed in all their information, and then you have another section down below, which is information about the nominee. Well, are you going to have them type all the information again about themselves. They already typed their own information above, but but in this workflow, they allow people to self-nominate. So why not just have a little checkbox that they click, and then it copies the fields from up above down to the fields below. So now they don't have to retype it, right? Something simple like that can really make your applicants a lot happier and make it a more pleasant experience. Less fields that they have to type out, the better. Here's another example that's kind of related to that. This is more related. This is for customers who would typically have, like, let's say, an abstracts workflow where you're submitting a paper and you have a table of speakers or a table of authors. You're using let's say the OpenWater table field. But with that, we've seen in many cases, it's not like great to just have a table field by itself, because many times you still want to have static fields for, let's say, the presenting author or the primary author or primary presenter. And you still want those static fields because there's a lot of benefits to having them in static fields, from reporting purposes to sending out email blasts to having a special section on your gallery. There's all sorts of benefits to that. So in this case, the customer had us implement just a button on the table field itself, where you fill out the table field by adding all the people, and then you click a button and it will copy that person's information from that row in the table down into static fields below, which are read-only fields. So you can then kind of swap back and forth as well. Let's say you change your mind, someone else is the presenting author, you can click the button on somebody else and it will replace them in the static read-only fields. So then you could use those fields later for whatever purpose that you want. I thought that was kind of an interesting thing that maybe a lot of people it doesn't even occur to them. But if you have a clever use of table fields and static fields, you can probably accomplish a lot in terms of back-end usability for email blasts, reporting, and PDFs and things like that. Shifting gears a little bit, I don't know how many people attending this webinar run workflows that involve mailing in physical products or physical entries. So typically, like, I see this with food and drink competitions, and people are submitting an online application that they also need to follow up with sending in some kind of physical component, like their new desserts or wines. Wine competitions are a big one. And for some of these, the customers had us implement a custom PDF output. So if you're using the OpenWater platform and someone submits an entry, that applicant can go back into their portal and they can print their application to PDF for their own records. So that functionality is already there, but it uses the default OpenWater PDF styling, which is just kind of like a listing of the fields and the field responses, one after the other, and that's it, right? But for these competitions, they wanted the applicant to be able to print that PDF, but instead of just showing like the default OpenWater output, instead it prints this custom PDF where it's almost like a packing slip. And we can actually generate barcodes and QR codes based on information from the form. So this is a typical packing slip that you might expect. And then the person will print that packing slip and include it in the package that they mail, so that when it's received at the warehouse location, the intake team can scan the barcode, scan a QR code, and maybe just load up like the admin screen in OpenWater straight from scanning the entry. So it helps standardize some of that, and it's just interesting. And I just wanted to share that. I just thought that was a great use case. We have a lot of flexibility when it comes to the judging component in terms of the styling and the views. What you're looking at here on this screenshot is the list view of judging, which I'm sure most of you are already familiar with. But what's a little different about it is that this customer wanted certain rows on the judging view, like the list view, to be highlighted in different colors depending on attributes that were attached to the submission. So in this case, we have one that's highlighted in yellow, we have one that's highlighted in green. Now this is a pretty simple example, but it illustrates some of the flexibility that we have when it comes to just making tweaks to your judging and how it looks. So we have quite a bit of functionality in terms of just what should appear and should not appear, but there's also styling things that we could do as well. And the reason I bring this up is because when you're using the OpenWater platform, you might find in different areas, such as PDF outputs, gallery configurations, both for the public gallery and judging galleries, what we're looking at here, you'll see features referencing use handlebars templates or custom HTML template. And those handlebars templates, we have training documentation around it. So if you're good with HTML, you can use that feature and completely design custom outputs to your needs. Now, certainly you can also leverage OpenWater's HTML team to make changes for you if you don't feel comfortable going into the HTML. But I just want to share that you could get into the weeds and change the output in various ways. I love this landing page. So I just want to show this landing page because it's one of my favorites. And the SOFI Awards, or Specialty Food Association, has been a customer for a very long time of OpenWater. And their page has kind of evolved over the years. But some years back, we created what we call it the super page, super landing page. And this is the OpenWater platform. It's just a landing page of the OpenWater platform. But our HTML team went in there and created this page for them. And they've been using different iterations of this over the years. But what I like to share with this, more so forget the page itself. I think that the page is cool and we can do that if you're interested. But what I want to share is more high level, which is your awards program the brand, or is your organization the brand? And it's just something to think about, because I think marketing of awards programs kind of is often overlooked and understated. So you think about it, you have your organization, and is the website of your organization just kind of showcasing, oh yeah, by the way, we run this awards program, but really all the branding around it is your organization? Or does your awards program itself have a brand, right? This is the SOFI Awards. This is a brand in and of itself, and they have a dedicated website and dedicated marketing just for that. That's separate than the actual organization. So it's the SOFI Awards run by Specialty Food Association rather than Specialty Food Association running an awards program. And I think that is an important distinction. And I just wanted to show that, this customer in particular, they've done a great job with that. I kind of look at them as a model for that pattern. And along with it, they wanted a really nice landing page. All right, so that covers a lot of customizations. I hope that was kind of interesting for a lot of people. I'm going to hold on one second. Looks like we have a bunch of questions coming in through the Q&A. We do, right? I think I'm wondering, should we just wait to the end to answer all the questions, or should we pause in the middle? I think, this is kind of a good point in my presentation to pause for questions, because then we do shift gears into more workflow changes, workflow discussions. So let's cover some of these right now.
Okay.
All right. So it looks like the first question here is, do we have access to set up the calc fields in our own forms, or does this require configuration? So I think that's in reference to this auto calculation field.
Yes.
Okay, so the answer is you can set up these fields yourself, and there is a section. I don't have this available here because we're kind of going off script, but I'm happy to kind of talk high level. And then I encourage you to reach out to your account representative or your customer support team. Just like if you want more details on this, you can schedule a call. I'm happy, and just a lot of times it'll be me on the call, and I can coach you through it as well. I'm happy to do that. There is a section in your submission form configuration area called developer settings. I don't know how many of you have been adventurous enough to go in there and click around. But if you do, go into your submission form configuration and go into the developer settings area, you can click a tab, which is like JavaScript or /CSS. So if you click there, you just see these like little areas for where you can put in your own CSS and your own JavaScript. So the general pattern is that you set up all the fields, and then once you're happy with how your fields are, you would go in and write some HTML, some CSS, and JavaScript that would do this custom tabulation. Because the problem is, like, we don't have a feature that you just click to enable, because everyone's custom calculation is different, because everyone has their own set of fields and their own way of calculating how another field should exist. So there's no way of really doing that. And it's not like we have any kind of like super Excel formula style feature or anything like that either. If you are clever with a little bit of CSS and JavaScript, we do have a help article that shows how to do and how to access our entire JavaScript API, which is immensely powerful. But if not, just reach out to our team, because our team could, implement the little JavaScript snippets for you. In some cases, if it's like what I'm sharing on my screen right now, it would be a pretty nominal cost. If it's something that's more intense, like this, then it could be, a meaningful cost to implement. So it just depends on the range of complexity of what you're trying to achieve. That was a long-winded answer. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I think it answered the second question as well, which was on the calc forms is configured, can we use a code and modify on other forms? Which I believe.
I don't see that question. Where was that one?
Once a calc field on a form is configured, can we use the code and modify it for other forms?
Oh, yes, that's a great question. So if you have us build like the JavaScript or create the JavaScript for one set of your forms, you can copy that CSS and JavaScript to other forms. Or if it's just the same program, you can clone that program and make edits. So that's what a lot of our customers actually have us do. They'll just have us implement, let's say, the first one, and then they see how we did it. And a lot of times, if it's not too crazy, kind of like this one's really crazy. But if it's more simple calculations, then a lot of our customers are just very comfortable just like taking a look at what we did and copying it to another program, and it'll work as is, 100%.
Perfect.
All right.
Are you allowed to have more than one integration? So, i.e., multiple programs, multiple integrations.
So I think that's related more towards like some of the first things that we were showing up here. So the answer is yes. So our integrations hub, if you enable our integrations hub, you have the ability to select what integrations you want, and you can create as many different lookups as you want. So you can have a lookup that looks up your fields in IMIS. You can have another lookup on another program, or even the same program but a different field that looks up from a CSV file or a Google Sheet. So you can mix and match in that way. What you can't really do is have multiple single sign-ons. You can't have a single sign-on that, if you're doing a single sign-on with Integrations Hub, it's got to be like one instance is tied to one single sign-on. But if you have multiple instances of our product, like completely separate products, then you can have a different single sign-on per product. So I would say the single sign-on might be the limitation there. But as far as everything else, lookups and pushbacks, you can push back to various multiple integrations simultaneously.
Perfect. We have a couple more here, but I know that time-wise we have a lot more slides to cover, so I can save these till the end.
Okay. Well, there's some really good ones here. Can the values on the table come from a lookup feature? Yes, it can actually. Yes, it can. It's a little bit trickier to set up. You may want to talk to your support rep, but it's actually done fairly regularly. do they have to be entered manually each time? Not sure context on that question. So we'll have to move past that one. Is there any easy way to print blank information, blank nomination forms in PDF as the end user sees them? So there is a feature, you may want to ask your support rep, but we do have a feature that allows you to print an empty submission form to PDF or Word. I don't remember at this time, but I think it will allow you, the admin, to print it, and then you could put a link on like your landing page that says click here to download in a blank version of our submission form. We do have that feature because it was requested years ago. We did build it, but it is somewhere you may just need to dig through the feature, maybe ask the support rep where that feature is. Wow, so many questions. This is crazy. I didn't answer that one. Are the attributes that highlight coming from info in the submission form or the evaluations? Oh, okay. So I think that was coming from this screen. So it would be either or. So it'll either work with we can make it work with either what the judge themselves entered just for that particular submission, or any attribute that was entered by the applicant. Okay. All right, two more here. Are also wondering what the mappings look like on the back end for both nominator is nominee function. That said, okay, so go back to that here. So that's for this question is also wondering what the mapping looks like on the back end for both the nominator is nominee function and the set as presenter function. So from the backend administrative perspective, these are just fields on the form that you can add yourself just from a configuration perspective. These are just fields. But this goes back to my earlier question is, once your fields are set up, can either you or probably in most cases, the OpenWater like front end team can go in and write that HTML, CSS, and JavaScript to add functionality to these fields to make something like this happen. So again, this all goes into that feature where there's that developer settings area in your admin section for the submission form. That's where all this is happening. The same thing for the evaluation form for the previous question. So yeah, the pattern that the mental model that you should have in your head is set up all the fields exactly as you want them to be set up. Set up your table fields, set up this, and then we'll go into those settings and add the CSS and add the JavaScript that like attaches functionality to your existing fields. So think of it as like your fields are there, and then we're enhancing the fields with more functionality with the JavaScript. Hope that answers your question. Can we edit the HTML on our landing page ourselves, or does that need to be done by OpenWater? So I think that goes to this question here. So on any public website page, including like the landing page, you can go in, and same thing with the whole theme. Like technically, we have some help articles. Like if you're adventurous, you can actually build your own theme completely yourself in OpenWater. Most of the time, our team does that, but you can go in and there's like a button called source mode when you're looking at what we call the WYSIWYG editor, where you would normally type in your content. You can click that button and you can manually edit the HTML yourself. Unfortunately, we don't have a handlebars feature currently on our public website pages. Our handlebars feature only exists on gallery pages and let's say PDFs, although it might be a good idea to expand that here as well. But you certainly can go into the HTML, make edits. It probably won't be as convenient. And it might just be a little bit harder to work with in kind of our handlebars feature, which applies in other areas. All right. Well, I don't know if we ran out of time, Rebecca. I'm happy to keep going if people find value out of this. And if people want to stick around, I can keep going, Rebecca. Up to you. Your call.
No, please continue.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I don't know if this was. We got people putting in saying they want me to keep going. So here we go. We got this is more like shifting into workflow stuff. So we have conducting a survey, ballot, and more tabulation. What you're looking at here is a simple screenshot of, I just set this up in my demo system, but it's a simple screenshot of a survey, right? It's just an OpenWater form. You can set it, anyone can set this up in minutes. But you have let's say just a series of radio fields and maybe some checkbox fields or things like that. So anyone can set this up in no time at all. I think that's already self-evident, but what's interesting is, and this feature has been rolled out, let's say in the past year, but we never really like advertised it, in my opinion, or communicated it effectively to any of our customers. They probably just discovered it by accident if you even know about it. But under reports, when you create a report, the advanced tab, there's a new checkbox there for enable survey and tabulation export. So if you enable that feature and you click manage, you set up the settings, there's a help article for that. You'll get like a new section available for different types of a new section where you can export the data. So you can export the data to CSV, Excel, or even an HTML chart. So what will happen is it will tabulate the results from the form for any of those radio dropdown or checkbox fields, any one of those, like, let's say quantitative fields, and either do it in Excel and like do the tabulation there, or actually, if you choose the HTML output, it will render these graphs for you. So I think historically, if someone used OpenWater to collect these survey responses, they would have to export all the data, all the submissions to Excel, and then have to write their own Excel formulas. I don't know. It could probably get pretty messy in Excel, but this feature now just like does it for you. So I think that saves a lot of time. So just think about that. And the reason why I tell you to think about it is because when you just think of a simple survey, you can actually extrapolate that concept out to more use cases. And the most common use case that I've seen people use OpenWater for, in terms of like what I call like a survey style or ballot style, is you're actually submitting a ballot where for like board of directors nominations or elections, right, for a board of directors. And I know we have some customers like Aslo is big on elections and things like that. So people are like, well, why do I have to even use OpenWater for this? Well, one of the big benefits of using OpenWater is we kind of specialize in single sign-on. It's something that we're really good at. We have our integrations hub now, which takes it to the next level. So if you have to limit the people who vote for a board of directors, let's say your members, only members are allowed to submit these ballots. Well, you can have them log in through single sign-on, complete their ballot, and then use that tabulation feature in the reports to give you the results. If it's nice and clean like that, it should just work for you. If you want something, maybe if you have like a bunch of like niche questions, and schedule a call with your account rep, we could probably strategize, does this pattern make sense for you in terms of having a ballot process or kind of a more voting process. But I would say the most frequent thing is again, seeing this tied with a single sign-on component and a restriction. The next thing I want to talk about is like a job board. Okay. I've seen this used a couple times, but in my opinion, like, our customers do not use our gallery features nearly enough. So if you're an association and you don't have your own job board that you offer to your members or to your industry, you are missing out on a revenue generating opportunity. That's just a fact. You're missing out on a revenue generating opportunity by not offering your members and your constituents and your industry a job board where people can post job openings, in which case is what this OpenWater form example is showing, and then charging a fee for that. Because don't forget, OpenWater, like, if you're on this webinar and you don't use OpenWater to collect application fees, it may pass you by that OpenWater has the ability to charge fees for submitting. So you can have a form where people go to fill out the details for posting a job, charge them, and then use our OpenWater gallery feature. Oh, by the way, you can have member and non-member pricing if you're using single sign-on. And then use our OpenWater gallery feature to showcase those job openings to your visitors. Just like this. This is just an example. This is my demo system I set up. But you can imagine someone clicks on a job and sees all these attributes that are all, this is 100% configured. Like you could set this all up in a day. Set up your form, set up your fees, set up your gallery, and you have a job board platform. And you just introduced a revenue generating opportunity to your organization. Something to think about. You can also limit visitors. You can restrict visitors to your gallery. You can have your gallery wide open, but you may want to make it a members only benefit. For example, you can our gallery feature allows you to have like visitor access restrictions, so you can only access the gallery if you're logged in through single sign-on and you're a recognized member, for example. So we have that functionality. So once you hook into OpenWater with single sign-on, it opens up a whole slew of potential features. Okay. Next one is like a reimbursements form, where we have this feature in OpenWater called funds. If you enable this feature, it doesn't cost anything to enable the funds feature, but I think it's hidden by default. It's used primarily by customers who run scholarships, where you can create like different pools of funds. So we have, in this example, my demo system, we have coaching funds and travel funds. I created two different pools of funds. And once you set up your pools of funds, you can have a program that you collect form entries where people, I guess put whatever fields you want to collect that make them justify that they should get reimbursed. Okay, so this is more of a reimbursement program. And as an admin, you can review that. Like, let's say it goes into pending approval in your admin settings, and then you mark it as approved. And when you enable the funds feature, you get an extra tab on each entry in your admin screen called funding. And then you can add a new transaction. So you can add multiple transactions to the same entry, and it will just keep track of how much of your funds have been dispersed using the funds feature. You can see how much is remaining, how much you could export all the data to Excel and get a full list of all the transactions. What it doesn't do, it doesn't actually distribute the money itself. You still need to go through your traditional banking and to distribute funds in the way that you would, but this is more for tracking purposes. And this is a good example where I saw someone using this fund tracking feature for setting up a reimbursement program. It's just a way to collect information to send reimbursements out. But this, cuts down on a whole bunch of administrative labor. If you just have an OpenWater form to collect the form, and then you're tracking the funds who receive the funds and how much is left. Okay. I've also seen someone set up a visa invitation letter form. So this is an OpenWater form that's what we call these sidecar programs are typically run in coordination with, so let's say you're running a conference through the OpenWater platform. So we call this a sidecar program, and it's a form where people who might be presenting in the United States need to get an official visa letter. So you set up a form to collect all the visa letter applications, and then from there you can either send them an email with an official PDF, or I even saw one customer had us create a custom PDF so that using the OpenWater fields, so it actually creates the PDF automatically, and then the person can print that. So people get really creative in terms of generating that PDF that needs to be sent to this person, and they use OpenWater to do it. Okay, I want to showcase this case study gallery, which I think is interesting. This goes back to my theme that customers don't use our gallery feature enough. So here is the American Society of Dermatopathology. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. It's a mouthful, but we have it's just a gallery of all these different case studies, and they actually collect the case studies from their members effectively, or people from the public. They submit a case study, and you don't necessarily need to collect it from the public. If you're an admin, you can just add the entries yourself, and you just use OpenWater's gallery as almost like a like a website and showcasing content. But you have your gallery feature turned on, and you're showcasing all these case studies. And then all this was collected from the submission form, right? So you have them submit like an image, you have them submit the question, you also have them submit some potential answers. And we added some more customizations on top of the gallery so that we actually turn the questions that they collected as normal OpenWater fields into, using some JavaScript. You can actually see them click an answer and then click submit, and it actually checks their answer, that whether or not they're correct. So you had your basic OpenWater functionality, and then again, we used our handlebars feature. Our HTML team went in there and actually enhanced it so that you can do this kind of question and answer style functionality. But yeah, I think everyone should explore a gallery feature more, see what you can do with it, because it's pretty easy to set up. All right, then we have our conference galleries. So here's our standard conference gallery. I think anyone who uses us for OpenWater sessions or abstracts is probably familiar with. You have, if you use our scheduler feature where you're scheduling sessions into rooms and time slots, it will automatically generate the scheduler look and appearance on the gallery for you. You can see at 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. we have these different sessions running. And we have another slot later. So if you click on one of these, you can see the actual, like a table, if you want a table to appear, the list of presentations that are happening in that session. And if you click view on one of those, you can actually see the presentation itself, along with kind of a bio, headshot, anything that you might collect on the form. So this is our default functionality, which we show in most demos, people who are interested in using us for this workflow. But the reason I bring it up is because you can still have like separate programs for other purposes surrounding your conference. I mentioned a sidecar program for the visa letter. You can have sidecar programs for other things too, such as posters. So you see here, this is like an old style theme, but I like it because the top navigation is pretty clear, where you have the schedule, home, schedule, posters, exhibitors. That's your conference, right? That's your conference right there. You got your schedule. So I just showed the schedule example, but posters, you can have a program or just a separate filter on your gallery for your regular program that just filters on posters, and people can view an online version of the posters and sponsors as well. So if you're looking here, this is just the sponsors example. You can have them listed publicly, and then here's the posters example. And you can dig into each one and view the details. Here's like a more detailed view of poster. So using our gallery feature for more than just this kind of standard, what's happening, what's the agenda at the conference, but also using it as having other programs that are just for data sharing purposes is very common and highly recommended. So hope that was helpful. That's about it. Yeah, 45 minutes of content here. I want to thank everyone for joining. I hope you got some value out of this. If you'd like to discuss any of today's items, reach out to your account representative. We can have a strategy call with me, if I'm available, which I probably will be. I've been doing this for about 6 months and just having lots and lots of strategy calls with customers. Even if you just want to talk through something and just say, is this even possible? Or is there a better way to do this? You want to have an audit of an existing program. Like, am I doing this the right way? I came in, been running OpenWater for 3 or 4 years, and I'm new to this. Can we just take a look? Are we doing things correctly? So I'm happy to, hop on calls with all of you and go through that. But if there's anything in today's presentation that kind of sparked some ideas and you just want to talk through it, happy to do so. So I think we have a couple more questions. We'll just see if we can wrap up here.
Perfect.
Is there any way to do logic-based branching across separate questions? So we have, go back here. Let's see. I don't know where we left off. But is there a way to do logic-based branching across separate questions? So we have the normal branching, which might appear here in this example. I'm not sure. Let me see if this works. I don't think we have a branching example here, but we have a normal pattern, which is completely out of the box, no code at all, which is if you answer a radio field or a drop-down box or a checkbox, you can have different branching logic appear. We also have our category groups feature, which is if you select a different category, a different form can appear. So those are the two ways where we have branching logic. If you have there is like another request where if you answer some question on page 1 a certain way, then some questions should appear or not appear on, like, say, page 3 or 4. That we don't have out of the box, but again, using our JavaScript functionality, we have done that on a case-by-case basis for certain customers, from a development perspective. Does that export HTML graph work with checkbox fields where folks can check multiple boxes? So I think that was a question about the survey, which is here. Yeah, if you see in the survey example, the last question is a checkbox question, and that is tabulated in the same way that that chart is calculated. Can I embed an OpenWater form on another website? For example, a volunteer application form embedded on my member-only community site. So we do get some questions with regards to, can we like embed OpenWater in an iframe on whichever website. We strongly oppose that. We don't really support the submission form being in an iframe because there's a host of other issues like logging in. Well, then you have to make that form an anonymous form, which certainly we have that feature to do so, but then like what happens to the thing, there's all sorts of negative side effects, so we don't really support embedding the form. The only thing that we do support in terms of embedding on another site would be the gallery. So we have done that a number of times where a customer uses the gallery feature and then they embed through iframe on their site the gallery. We have our last question. Is there a way to see other galleries? So, as part of a follow-up item, I think we're going to send out, Rebecca, tell me if I'm speaking out of turn, but I think we'll send out like a recording of this video. Maybe we can also include just links to galleries that are out there. There is one gallery that I love, which is the AIA Maryland. They're an architecture competition. I always use them as like, hey, look at this great gallery. So maybe we can include a couple links to some of my favorites.
Yeah, we can definitely do that. So as Zach mentioned, we will be sending out an email after this webinar with a copy of this particular recording, and then also a couple email addresses attached to who you guys should be reaching out to. So if you have any additional questions, or as Zach mentioned, would like to book a call to kind of go over maybe your particular use case or questions in more detail, please feel free to reach out. Either myself or my team will definitely be able to direct you and book the right and appropriate calls to get that handled for you guys. So once again, we thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. We're really looking to have many more of these throughout the year and upcoming in the future, but appreciate your time today and hope everyone has a great rest of your Thursday.
Thank you.
Thank you.